Well, good afternoon and welcome back. This is our afternoon session on NXDN, and we hope you enjoyed our first session this morning, but we're going to take a little different tack with what we're going to show you this afternoon, and in fact, it is the debut of a brand new software application for NXDN. Now, heretofore, as we've talked about NXDN and presented it, we've focused on the voice part or the oral part of NXDN communications. NXDN does have superior audio. It does have a better definition in terms of improved signal for receiving audio, particularly with portable radios. And voice is how we've primarily communicated with NXDN. But this is a mode that is digital. And anytime you've got a digital mode, it's bits and bytes. So we're going to show you a brand new, or actually not so brand new, endeavor that you can communicate with NXDN, and it's called text messaging. It's new because we haven't really had a means of using it efficiently in amateur radio until now. Text messaging, or short digital messaging as ICOM refers to it, has been around since the beginning of NXDN back in 2005. It just has not been used a lot. But now with a brand new program that we're going to be debuting for you this afternoon called Weather Message for NXDN, we're going to show you a very focused way of communicating via text rather than by voice. And you can do it using the same talk groups or a different talk group. It all depends upon what your needs are. And we call the app Weather Message and have a big lightning bolt there in the lower left-hand corner, simply because the genesis for doing this is a means of communicating in a non-verbal sense where we need to be able to pass information that may have a lot of numbers or maybe very data-oriented, and that way that likely can be better communicated via text message, and we can go back to the text messages that we both sent and received with this very easily and use that information with future voice messages. So we're going to show you Weather Message for NXDN now. This works on the entire Florida NXDN system, primarily using talk groups, but we're also going to talk a little bit about how you can send someone a directed message if you're both on the same repeater. So we will demonstrate that this afternoon. First of all, let's write a message, and that's very easy to do. We're just going to go down to our message box, and we're going to say, "Welcome to Weather Message for NXDN." Make sure I've got that spelled correctly. I hit the Enter key, and we now see our message displayed up here in our message window. That is the window that is here on the right-hand side. We're going to show you what goes into the left-hand side in just a moment. Now, if you take a look at how that message was received, you'll notice a very key clue as to whether a message has been sent by you or the message has been received on your computer. Looking at a computer where the message was received, you'll notice that all of this text is in bold font face, so it stands out. That way you can differentiate between the messages that you've sent and the messages that you have received very easily, very quickly. We're going to send another message right now, and we're going to say this is a test message. And we'll do that as rapidly as I can type. And there's another message that we've sent from our sending computer to our receiving computer. Notice that both of these on the sending computer are in regular font face, and it's very easy to see what's happened here. We've got the time the message was sent, who it was sent from, and who it was sent to. And in this case, it says local because we're using Talk Group 1, which we call local here in West Central Florida. So time and date stamped, who it's from, where it's going to, and this is a message. Now, we also pointed out that we have another list box here on the left-hand side of our weather message for NXDN window, and it has station ID, time, and op. And we're going to give you an indication now of just how that can be used. We've just keyed up a hand radio, a portable radio that we might otherwise talk on, and you'll notice that we now have the station with its alias, the ID that that station actually transmits, the time that that transmission was received, and whether or not the op is in voice mode or in data mode. And watch the time column here very carefully. This original message, original transmission was received at 13:37:42. We're going to key the radio up again, and notice that our time updates itself. So we can keep a running tab of our time and when that last transmission from that station was heard. Now we're going to go over to our other station, and if you'll bear with us here just a second, we're going to walk over to the other station, and we're going to send a quick message that's going to say message received. Now you can see the real difference between how a message looks when you have sent the message versus how the message looks when it has been received. Our sent messages from this computer are in regular font face. Our received messages are in bold font face. And after you have message QSOs with other hams, you'll see very easily and very quickly which ones you've sent, which ones you've received, and that will help you keep track of everything. Now, in the lower left-hand corner of our display, you'll notice our weather message graphic, and you'll also notice 4 buttons here. In this case, the top one is labeled Direct 1. That's because that is the memory channel on the radio that we're currently using. But we could go to another one that's labeled LSEM or TSEM or FSeminal. These are all different memory channels that are in the radio. And if we want to change channels, let's go over here and we're going to select FSeminal at the very bottom. We've just done that. Notice that our FSeminal now is in blue and inverted text. But also notice that over here in a little box that's right below our message creation box, we have another box here that says 1200. That's because the FSeminal channel operates on talk group 1200. So as you change channels, and if you have different talk groups assigned to your various channels, that talk group ID will show up, and that will be the talk group that you will be transmitting and receiving on. If we go over here to LSeminal, or let's go to TSeminal first, notice that our talk group ID has changed to 1299, which here in West Central Florida is our Skywarn talk group, where we can communicate directly with the National Weather Service office at Ruskin. And by the way, 1299 is the talk group that we will be using whenever we have a Skywarn severe weather event here in West Central and Southwest Florida. If we go to LSeminal or LSEM, notice that we're back to talk group 1. And that's because that particular channel happens to be set up for using the Seminole repeater, or any of our repeaters for that matter, in local mode only. Now we're going to go back to Direct 1 because that's what we're using for our communications today. And with Direct 1, we can communicate with any computer, any radio that happens to be on board. Now we mentioned earlier that we have our voice radio, which is NB9X-11, And notice that our time just updated there as we keyed up our radio. Now let's show you something that is somewhat interesting. Weather message for NXDN is for more than just communicating about weather. It is a general NXDN short digital messaging program. It'll work with your Windows 10 or Windows 11 computer. And the whole idea behind the program is to be able to communicate textually one operator to another versus using voice or as an adjunct to voice communications. Well, we have an operator now with this voice radio, and by the way, all NXDN radios with displays are capable of displaying a digital message. So we're going to show that to you right now, and we're going to do it in a very special way. Let's assume for the moment that we are in some sort of a tactical operation, and we're both using, or we're all using, the same frequency and the same talk group. So in addition to being able to send messages via a local talk group, as we did, we're going to go up here now and we're going to click on NB9X-1. And notice down here in our ID box that we've changed now from a local 1, which was black characters with a white display, to a green background and white characters. And notice that the ID that is now displayed here is the individual ID that is assigned to the radio, NB9X-1. All right, now what are we about to do? Well, we want to send that particular operator a message, but we don't need to flood all of the other radios that are on frequency and on this talk group with that message. So we're now going to send an individual message, which is part of the NXDN messaging protocol. And in fact, you can do this with voice as well. So now we're going to send a message to that operator, and we want him to come home. So we're going to say return to base. And that may look a little bit strange when it comes out on the display, but we did a little extra formatting here because this radio happens to be an 8-character display. So what we did is we wrote the first characters in alpha characters, we put in a couple of spaces, and then continued with the remaining part of the text. How he looks at that on the radio is actually return for 1 second, and then it changes to base for another second. It makes it a lot easier rather than trying to read characters scrolling across the screen. So that's one of the things that we've built into the program. It is a functionality that we can do manually, or if you've got a longer message, we also have a software routine in the program that will actually take your text and break it up into 8-character segments, making it very easy for anyone with an 8-character display radio like the ICOM F2100DS or the F6130D. Make it very easy for them to read the message, comprehend it, and be able to do whatever they need to do next. In this case, return to base. All right, so now we have sent an individual message, and you can send an individual message anytime the two of you are using the same repeater. We're working on upgrading the Florida NXDN glue, if you will, NX core that we've talked about, so that it will pass individual messages from one repeater to another repeater through NX core. That's still a work in progress. We'll have an update for you on when that becomes available on our Wednesday night nets, held every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. local time on Talk Group 1200. Now, if we don't want to send another message to that particular station, let's say the next message that we want to send needs to be a talk group message, then what we can do is click on one of our channel change buttons here, and notice that we went from 12201, which was an individual ID, back to talk group 1. And now we can type another message, and we're going to go SVR thunderstorm for northeast Hillsborough County until 6:45 p.m. Now, there's no actual thunderstorm that we know of today, but there might be a thunderstorm at a later date, and this is one of the things that we can do. We can keep everybody informed with messages like this that will supplement any of our voice traffic when we're in a Skywarn operation. We also can send messages about some of the weather events that are going on. Maybe we have somebody out there that has taken a hail report or winds of 60 miles per hour or whatever the case happens to be. Or maybe we take a report where a spotter is able to transmit something to us by voice, but we need to actually be able to relay that by text messages. This is the way to get it done. This is what a message might look like. Now, if that message were a little bit longer, and we can have messages of up to 89 characters displayed, well, then that message would wrap around, because sooner or later we run out of real estate over on the right-hand side. But the program is written so that those longer messages will word wrap, as it will, and you'll actually have 2 lines of text for that one single message. Now, we mentioned the message length. The program is written to be able to provide a payload of 89 actual characters of messaging text. NXDN message protocol is 100 characters. Well, what are we doing with the other 11 characters? Well, we have some special characters involved, plus, because this is ham radio, it is always a good idea to identify the source of the transmission. And technically speaking, while the payload that is put out over the air includes the ID number like 12201 or 12211, that's really not an ID unless you've got a lookup table. So one of the things that we do when you set up the program is you put in the legal FCC ID that you're going to be using with this station, and that gets transmitted. And what we do is we add that to the end of every message that is sent so that you know that you are in full compliance with Part 97. Pretty good idea. You won't see that information displayed up here as part of the message, but anyone who is looking at a message on their radio display out in the field will also see the ID that was attached to that particular message. Speaking of setup, why don't we take a look at that for just a moment, because that's something that as you install the program you have to do. If the program does not find the file on your computer that contains some very specific information about your operation, you will see not this particular window, but you will see the setup window. So let's open that up. Let's go in and look at our setup window. Well, right now we have several key components, several areas. Notice that the call sign we're using is NB9X-3. I've put my name in there. My Skywarn ID. Not everyone has a Skywarn ID. Not every Skywarn spotter has a Skywarn ID, as the Weather Service has kind of moved away from that, at least here in the Ruskin County warning area. But if you have a spotter ID, good idea to put that in there. And my NXDN ID is 12203. That is a unique ID for the radio that I'm using with our weather message for NXDN. And if you don't have an NXDN ID, you can go to https://radioid.net, and they will issue you a certified NXDN ID that you can use in your radio. Now, another important piece of our setup is how we communicate between the radio and the computer. We do that with serial communications, and it just so happens that the radio that we're using, which by the way is a first generation radio. There are a number of radios that work with the weather message for NXDN from ICOM, and the first generation radios like the F4161 DS and DT and the F6061D work very nicely with weather message for NXDN. They are fully supportive of the protocol and the serial connectivity. So if you have one of those first generation radios, you were thinking maybe about upgrading and what am I going to do with this older radio? Well, here is another use for your first generation radio. In this case, the radio happens to be talking to the computer on COM 16. Maybe yours is COM 3 or COM 6 or COM 14. In this case, it's COM 16. NXDN radios also need a baud rate or a speed which the computer and the radio pass traffic. Now, with NXDN radios, you can set them up internally in the radio for 4800, 9600, or 19200 baud or kbps. In this case, because I have a need for speed, well, I'm using this first generation radio, which can talk at 19.2, so I select 19.2. And just to show you how you do all of that, we'll pull down our menu. There are your options, so you don't have to worry about typing something in, getting a typo in there. It's all in a pull down list, as also are the COM ports that you have available. And these are all of the COM ports that are available on this computer. COM 16 happens to be the one that goes with this radio. And then the third part of our setup is this little grid where we put in the information about the memory channels that we want to be able to access and the talk groups we want to be able to access with our program. So memory channel number one, that's not the memory channel or the first button that's number one, it's the actual memory channel in the radio. And this particular radio that we're using was programmed specifically to use for this program, so we use 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll reveal those in just a moment. So memory channel 1 is going to go to our first button. It will have a caption of direct-1, and the talk group ID, as we scroll to the right so we fully expose that, is TGID number 1. Second memory channel is LSEM, also on talk group 1. Third channel is TSEM with a talk group of 1299. And as we scroll down to our fourth memory channel, or our fourth entry, it's F Seminole, which is actually a name that we use for labeling our memory channels on a lot of radios, and that is assigned to talk group 1200. Now, let's say you've got a radio that's already pre-programmed. Maybe you've got lots of memory channels taken up, and you've got to play hopscotch, if you will, because not everything is in the first zone. There is a way to calculate what your memory channel is. Maybe it's out in zone 7 and memory channel number 4. Here's how you do it. Open your programming software and take a look at the number of memory channels that you have allotted to each zone preceding that particular memory channel that you want to program in here, let's say in slot, well, in any slot for that matter. So let's keep it simple. Let's say all of your memory or all of your zones have 16 memory channels. So you're in zone 7 and memory channel number 4 is the one you want to enter. So you take 16 times 6, which is 96, and we said that our memory channel is in zone 7, memory channel number 4. So 96 plus 4 is 100. So over here in our left-hand column, instead of putting in 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're going to program this slot right here as memory channel number 100, because that's what it will channel steer to when we press the button. We put in 100, we put in the name of the channel, and then the talk group. This can get to be a little bit confusing, and you may actually, after you've set all of this up and saved it, you may actually have to go back and maybe make an adjustment because you got the math wrong. One other thing too that I want to point out that can trip you up. We said we've got 16 memory channels in each zone. Now, we may only have 14 of those memory channels actually programmed. We may have 2 blank memory channels. Those are still considered valid when you're trying to calculate a memory channel number that is out in a 2nd or 3rd or 7th zone. So if you have any memory channels in a zone that are not actually being used, you still have to include those when you are calculating a memory channel number that is out in some zone beyond zone number 1. Now, if we want to save this information, we just click the Save button. Let's say everything here is correct. We don't want to save it, so we just go over here and we hit the Cancel button, and it says, the settings are not saved. Okay? Well, absolutely it's okay. And we're right back where we started. Had we saved that information, had we made any changes to our settings information, then the other thing that we would also need to do is restart our program for all of those new settings to take place. And you'll run into that with most Windows applications. We've talked about the 4 buttons here. As we press each one of those buttons, it channel steers to that memory channel on the radio. This also uses the same protocols that we're using to send and receive messages. It's just a different command within ICOM's PC commands library. Okay, yeah, what if you've got a Kenwood radio? Well, that's a great question. As much as we would love to support messaging with a Kenwood radio, it uses a different protocol that unfortunately we haven't been able to get our hands on. But if the fine folks at Kenwood want to send us their protocol, we will be happy to write that into the program so that we can do both Kenwood and ICOM messaging. It's only fair, I guess, but right now it is ICOM only. But hey, Kenwood, if you want to send us your protocol that is similar to ICOM's PC commands, we'll be more than happy to take that, massage it, incorporate it into the program, and that way we can include all NXDN users, because unfortunately NXDN messaging uses a different protocol between ICOM and Kenwood. And if you send an ICOM generated message to a Kenwood radio, the Kenwood radio sees something. It sees bits and bytes, but it doesn't know what to do with it. And vice versa. If you send a message from a Kenwood radio to an ICOM radio, the ICOM radio will look at it and say, yeah, I know it's bits and bytes and it's real live RF, but I can't decipher it. It's kind of like speaking a different language. A couple of other things that we want to show you with our weather message for NXDN. Now, we've shown you how to create text messages by typing from scratch. Yes, and that can be very time-consuming at times, and it can also be repetitive, because maybe you've got a list of messages that you will use quite often. You know, we had a return to base up here that we sent, but maybe we've got return to base someplace else so that whenever we need it, we can pull it in. Well, we've got a couple of special characters and character combinations that we can put in when we've got our cursor over here in the message box. And if we hit Control F, well, look at what we've got. We've got a box here with frequent messages. It's a pull-down list, so let's pull our list down, and we don't have any programmed in there. Oh, naughty us. Well, we'll change that. We're going to come over here, we'll cancel out of that. We're going to go over here to our settings box, And notice that on our settings menu, our last item here says fixed messages. So we're going to tap on that, and now we're going to create some fixed messages. And the first one is going to be return to base. All right, if I want to save this in my frequent messages list, I just hit the enter key, and now it's in our list. Let's try another message here. Let's just type in test message number 1. All right, that's now in our list as well. And there may be a time when we would want to send that message, and it could come in very handy. Let's send in another message here. We will have a severe weather alert. Go to TG 1299. That could come in very handy when we go into start Skywarn operations, so we've got that there. But you know what? Now we've got 3 messages here, and that test message number 1, do we really need it? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to click on that message, and we're going to come over here to our little button that's got a minus sign on it. And when we click the minus sign, are you really sure you want to delete this message? Well, we're not sure, but we've just deleted it anyhow. And so test message number 1 is gone. Our frequent message list now contains 2 messages. If we want to save this, we will go ahead and hit the save button, and now we have a message list. All right, let's go see if we can bring that back up. So we're going to go again to Control F. We're going to pull down our message list, and voila, there are our 2 saved messages. So let's say we want to send out the severe weather alert message. So we're going to highlight that, and we're going to send. And since our radio is chirping and it says severe weather alert, go to talk group 1299, I would say we're successful. So that's how you can access messages that you may use frequently, and instead of typing those messages out one at a time, which can be time consuming, you just go to a pull down list by hitting Control F. It's a keyboard combination. Now, if you're into Skywarn, like I'm into Skywarn, you'll know that when we go through Skywarn training, the Weather Service tries to help us with how the information that we have is presented in a neat, logical, and timely manner. And one of the things that they have asked us to do is to use something that's called the TEL method. That's time, event, location, TEL. So this program is called Weather Message for NXDN. Let's say that we've taken a voice report on NXDN or on analog, and we want to submit that report in the TEL format. So one of the other features that we've incorporated, and we can access it by hitting Control T, is our time, event, location window. Our time is already filled in with the current time that is on the computer. Now, the event. Well, the party that called it in said that they had penny-sized hail. That's pretty good sized hail. That's about 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to go down here. Do we have? Yes, we have penny-sized hail. There it is right there. We have filled it in, and now we're going to freestyle key in the location. So remember before we had a severe thunderstorm warning for northeast Hillsborough County? Well, we had penny-sized hail, Seffner, Florida. And in detail, we're going to say reported by spotter HIL 999. So we have the time, the event, a location, and we can get more detailed if we've got a cross street or a particular address where the hail was spotted. We can go ahead and put that in there. and in the detail reported by spotter HIL 999. We want to submit that. Boom, it's that easy. We just click on the submit button, and now we have a message that has been created and transmitted that says time, the event, the location, and some detail related to it. And again, don't forget that when you send that message, your call sign as the sender is automatically added to the end of the message, but not necessarily displayed up here on the screen. Time saving, isn't it? And it gives the National Weather Service the information that they're looking for in the format that they're looking for. Now, let's say that you've sent the message. Again, we've got it time-stamped. We know what talk group it is on. And by the way, you can send messages on talk group 1299 with this program. So that's our Skywarn talk group here in West Central Florida. But it's also a good idea, in addition to sending the message, to also keep a local record of the message. So one of the things that is built into Weather Message for NXDN is logging capability. Every message that you send, every message that you receive is automatically logged by the application. And we've got two means of logging. We can look at logging our messages and also logging the stations that we have heard. Well, let's take a look at our messages. And looking at logged messages is really pretty simple. You just click on that, and then down here at the bottom, we have a pull-down list that says select the date, because we store all of our messages by date. So this is today's date, and there are all of our messages that this computer has sent and received on this date. A few test messages in there, and sure enough, down here, our last message at 14:08:13 was penny-sized hail, Seffner reported by the spotter. So if you ever need to go back, even while you're in the middle of a session, as we've just done right now, you can bring up the log for that date on all messages that have been received so far. And if you need to go back even further and look at yesterday's or the day before or 2 weeks ago, all of that data is stored on your computer in distinct files. To close our log window, we simply hit the close button and it goes away, and we're right back to live operation here on the screen. Pretty neat, isn't it, huh? So let's just recap what you can do with Weather Message for NXDN. First of all, you can send messages on any talk group. You can receive messages on any talk group. You can change the talk group by changing channels, and we have 4 buttons here in the lower left-hand corner. Each one of those could be assigned to a different talk group or even a different repeater. So in my case, I normally use the Seminole repeater because it's close by, but let's say it isn't available and I still need to get the message through. Well, if I've got my radio programmed to one of our other repeaters like Pasco or Boyette or Verna, and I can hit all 3 of those easily, well, I can program all of that down here, and I can program it by talk group. Now, here's another handy tip when you're actually programming the radio that you're going to use with Weather Message for NXDN. Those of you with first-generation radios like the F4161DT or the F6061 know that if you want to hear traffic on all of the talk groups, you just simply set your radio to RAN squelch, and that way you hear everything. In the new second-generation radios like the F2100s, the F4400, the F62D, the F6400, and these are all UHF radios, by the way, you know that you can set selective squelch, which will be needed for individual messaging, but there is a structure within the program called RX group, where you can include up to 8 different talk groups and be able to scan those talk groups on a moment's notice and in some immediacy, so that at some point, if you're trying to monitor for messages from multiple talk groups, you'll be able to do it and still retain the capability of being able to send or receive an individual message. That, by the way, requires selective squelch to be set. So when you're programming your radio, if you want to be able to monitor, let's say, messages from talk group 1, talk group 1200, the Florida talk group, or maybe talk group 1299, the Skywarn talk group, set up your RX group so that you have entries for that particular zone for 1, 1200, and 1299. Those are the talk group IDs. And Weather Message for NXDN will be able to, at that point, capture all the messages from all of those talk groups and display them. And that's why we have our 2 column out here, because it will be able to show you maybe a message from Florida or a message from Skywarn, whatever the name or the alias is for that talk group ID. And if you send or receive an individual message, well, then that will also be displayed in the from as well as the to, depending upon which end of the message you're on. Pretty neat stuff, isn't it? Now, there's one other thing that is a new update that we couldn't report to you today, but we have since learned through some testing and have verified it, that we can add one more radio to our list of radios that do NXDN text messaging with Weather Message, or for that matter, just about any other messaging program that meets the protocol. The ICOM F6130D, which I know a number of you have purchased for voice, and you've purchased because it is a very economical radio. Well, now with the addition of the OPC 2078 interface cable, you can now use the 6130D for messaging. Great way to enhance the capability of that radio that you've already fallen in love with, and particularly that white on black display, which makes reading things very easily. But now the F6130 will also work with Weather Message for NXDN and all of the things that we've shown you today. The channel steering, the sending messages, receive messages, even sending individual messages, all of that works with the F6130D, as well as the newer F4400 series, the F6400 series, and the very small but very powerful F62D, which is a UHF NXDN radio. So wrapping up, what you've seen today can be done on the entire Florida NXDN system as it's currently constituted and as it's growing. We hope to be adding the Sumter Villages repeater here in the very near future. We've just added the Babcock Ranch or Charlotte East repeater, and if you're on the other side of the county line, that's also known as Lee Link East, along with the Charlotte South repeater, which is Lee Link West, and the Sanibel repeater, which is out there 6 miles off the coast. But all of this works through all of those repeaters. We hope that you will now take your NXDN experience to the next level and not only enjoy NXDN for its superb voice quality, its superb ability to receive weak signals, but now also its ability to send and receive text messages with the touch of a few keys on your keyboard. Thank you for joining us today. We encourage you to tell your friends and neighbors about NXDN and about our new capabilities with Weather Message for NXDN. If you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to contact me at the address you see up on your screen, and we'll be happy to get back in touch with you just as quickly as possible. Thanks again.